For thousands of years, beneath the blazing sun of Egypt and under countless star-filled nights, a silent guardian has watched over the sands of Giza. It has seen kingdoms rise and fall. It has witnessed pharaohs become legends. It has endured invasions, empires, revolutions, and the passing of entire civilizations. Yet despite standing in one place for more than 4,000 years, it still refuses to surrender all of its secrets. This is the story of the Great Sphinx, a monument so famous that nearly everyone recognizes its face. A monument so ancient that it was already old when the Roman Empire was young. And a monument that continues to challenge historians, archaeologists, and travelers from around the world. As dawn breaks across the Giza Plateau, the first rays of sunlight strike the face of the Sphinx. This is no accident. The monument faces east, toward the rising sun. Every morning it greets a new day, just as it has done for millennia. Standing beside the pyramids, the Sphinx appears both familiar and mysterious. Its body is that of a lion. Its head is that of a king. Together, they create one of the most powerful images in human history. Strength and intelligence, power and authority, earth and heaven. Yet one question remains. Why was it built? Was it simply a royal monument? A guardian of sacred tombs? A symbol of divine kingship? Or something more? The answers are not always straightforward. Unlike many ancient monuments, the Sphinx left behind no detailed construction records. No inscription clearly states who ordered its creation. No ancient document explains its exact purpose. Instead, historians must piece together clues from archaeology, architecture, and the surrounding landscape. The result is a story filled with evidence, interpretation, and enduring mystery. For generations, people have stood before the Sphinx and felt something difficult to explain. Perhaps it is the expression on its face. Perhaps it is its enormous size. Or perhaps it is the realization that this monument has survived longer than most civilizations. Today, the Great Sphinx remains one of the world's most recognizable landmarks. Millions visit every year. Countless photographs capture its image. Yet even in an age of satellites and advanced technology, questions remain. Who exactly does the face represent? Why was such an enormous statue carved? How was it built? And what stories lie hidden beneath centuries of sand and stone? Tonight, we journey back to the age of the pharaohs. We will explore what archaeologists know, what remains uncertain, and why the Great Sphinx continues to fascinate humanity. Because sometimes, the greatest mysteries are not hidden underground. Sometimes they stand in plain sight. Silent, patient, waiting. The Great Sphinx of Giza is one of those mysteries, and its story begins over 4,000 years ago. Chapter 2. What the Sphinx is. Before we can understand the mystery of the Sphinx, we must first understand the monument itself. At first glance, photographs can be deceptive. Many visitors arrive expecting something large. Few expect something this large. The Great Sphinx stretches approximately 73 meters from paw to tail. Its height reaches around 20 meters. Its face alone is several meters tall. Standing beside it, a human being appears tiny. The monument dominates the landscape. Unlike many ancient statues that were assembled from separate blocks, the Sphinx was carved directly from a natural limestone outcrop. In other words, the builders transformed part of the landscape itself into a monument. The bedrock became the body. The desert became a sculpture. This achievement required remarkable planning and labor. Ancient workers removed thousands of tons of stone. Some of the extracted blocks were later used in nearby temples. The monument that remained gradually took shape: a lion's body, a human head, a royal headdress. Together, these elements created an image filled with symbolism. In ancient Egypt, lions represented strength and protection. Their power was respected and feared. The king, meanwhile, represented divine authority on earth. Combining the two produced a powerful statement. The ruler was strong like a lion and protected by the gods. The Sphinx wears the traditional Nemes headdress, often seen on royal statues. Although damaged by time, traces of its original features remain visible. Its ears survive. Parts of its royal beard have been recovered. The face still commands attention, despite centuries of erosion. Many people immediately notice one missing feature: the nose. The Sphinx's nose disappeared long ago. For centuries, stories emerged about how it was lost. Some blamed invading armies. Others invented dramatic legends. Historical evidence suggests the damage likely occurred centuries ago, though the exact circumstances remain uncertain. The missing nose has become one of the monument's most recognizable features. Yet it represents only a small fraction of the damage endured over thousands of years. Wind, rain, temperature changes, human activity, all have left their mark. Ancient restorations began surprisingly early. Even during the age of the pharaohs, the Sphinx required repairs. The monument was already old enough to need restoration. That fact alone reveals its extraordinary age. Its surface contains layers of history. Each repair tells a story. Each crack reflects centuries of survival. Yet, despite weathering and damage, the monument remains instantly recognizable. There is something almost timeless about its appearance. A calm expression, a powerful body, an unchanging gaze directed toward the eastern horizon. For modern visitors, it is easy to focus on the mystery. But before it became a mystery, it was a masterpiece, an achievement of engineering, art, and royal ambition. And understanding who created that masterpiece brings us to the next chapter of the story. The Age of Pharaoh Khafre. Chapter 3. Built in the Age of Khafre. As the Great Sphinx rises from the limestone bedrock of Giza, one question stands above all others. Who built it? The answer may seem simple. Most Egyptologists believe the Great Sphinx was created during Egypt's 4th dynasty, around 2500 BCE, during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre. Yet arriving at that conclusion required decades of research, excavation, and careful study. Unlike many monuments of ancient Egypt, the Sphinx offers no clear inscription declaring its creator. No stone tablet proudly announces the king who ordered its construction. No surviving royal document provides a detailed account of its carving. Instead, historians have had to follow the evidence, and much of that evidence points toward Khafre. To understand why, we must travel back more than 4,000 years. Ancient Egypt was experiencing one of the most remarkable periods in its history. Today we call it the Old Kingdom. Often referred to as the Age of the Pyramid Builders, it was a time when pharaohs commanded vast resources and enormous labor forces. The pyramids of Giza were among the greatest achievements of this era. First came the Great Pyramid of Khufu, then the Pyramid of Khafre, then the Pyramid of Menkaure. Together, these monuments transformed the desert plateau into a landscape unlike anything the world had ever seen. Khafre, believed to be the son of Khufu, ruled during the height of Egypt's power. His pyramid still dominates the Giza skyline today. Although slightly smaller than Khufu's Great Pyramid, its position on higher ground often makes it appear taller. Around Khafre's pyramid stood an elaborate complex of temples, causeways, and ceremonial structures, and it is here that the story of the Sphinx becomes especially interesting. The Great Sphinx sits directly beside Khafre's pyramid complex. Its location is not random. Its placement appears carefully planned. Archaeologists discovered that the stone removed while carving the Sphinx was used in nearby temples associated with Khafre's complex. This connection suggests that the monuments were created as part of the same construction project. The evidence becomes even stronger when examining the surrounding architecture. The Sphinx Temple and Valley Temple share similar construction techniques and materials. Their design fits comfortably within what historians know about 4th Dynasty building practices. When viewed together, the structures appear to belong to a unified royal plan, but location is only part of the argument. Many researchers have also studied the Sphinx's face. Could it represent Khafre himself? Over the years, scholars have compared the facial features of the Sphinx with statues known to depict the pharaoh. Some similarities have been noted. The shape of the face, the proportions. Certain artistic characteristics common to royal portraits of the period. However, the comparison is not perfect. Centuries of erosion have altered many details. Damage has removed important features that might have helped answer the question with certainty. As a result, some debate continues. Yet the majority of Egyptologists still consider Khafre the most likely candidate. The overall archaeological picture strongly supports that conclusion. Of course, alternative theories occasionally appear. Some writers have suggested the monument is much older than the 4th Dynasty. Others have proposed different builders. These ideas often attract public attention because they offer dramatic possibilities. However, most specialists remain unconvinced. Current archaeological evidence continues to support a 4th Dynasty origin connected to Khafre's reign. In archaeology, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And so far, the strongest evidence still points toward the traditional explanation. But even if Khafre ordered the monument's construction, another mystery remains. Why build it at all? Creating the Sphinx required enormous effort. Workers removed vast quantities of limestone. Engineers carefully shaped the stone. Artists crafted the royal face. Such a project demanded resources that only a powerful ruler could command. A monument of this scale was never intended to be merely decorative. It served a purpose. The challenge is determining exactly what that purpose was. Ancient Egypt invested tremendous energy into symbols. Every temple, statue, and pyramid carried meaning. The Sphinx was no exception. Its lion body and human head were carefully chosen. Its position beside the royal pyramid complex was deliberate. Its orientation toward the rising sun was significant. Everything about the monument suggests intention. Yet the precise message it was meant to convey remains open to interpretation. And that uncertainty is part of what makes the Sphinx so fascinating. The identity of its builder may be largely understood, but the deeper meaning behind the monument still invites questions. Questions that lead us into the next chapter. Why was the Great Sphinx built? What role did it play in the world of the pharaohs? And why did ancient Egyptians believe such a colossal guardian was necessary? The search for those answers begins next. Chapter 4. Why was it built? The Great Sphinx is one of the largest statues ever created in the ancient world. Its construction required enormous labor, careful planning, and valuable resources. But this raises an important question. Why would the ancient Egyptians invest so much effort into carving a giant lion with the head of a king? What purpose did it serve? Unlike a pyramid, which was clearly a royal tomb, the purpose of the Sphinx is less obvious. No ancient inscription survives to explain its exact function. No detailed records tell us what ceremonies took place before it. As a result, historians must reconstruct its meaning using archaeological evidence, religious beliefs, and the monument's location. The most widely accepted explanation is that the Sphinx served as a guardian. Its position supports this idea. The monument stands beside Khafre's pyramid complex, watching over sacred ground. In ancient Egypt, Lions symbolized strength, protection, and royal authority. A lion was considered one of nature's most powerful creatures. To combine the body of a lion with the head of a king created a powerful image. The message may have been clear to anyone who approached the royal complex. The pharaoh possessed both human intelligence and the strength of a lion. His power extended beyond death, and divine forces protected his eternal resting place. For the ancient Egyptians, death was not an ending. It was a transition into another existence. The survival of the king's spirit depended on maintaining cosmic order, known as Ma'at. This concept represented balance, harmony, truth, and stability throughout the universe. The pharaoh played a central role in preserving that order. Monuments were not simply displays of wealth. They were tools designed to maintain the relationship between humanity, nature, and the gods. The Sphinx may have been part of that sacred responsibility. Its gaze toward the eastern horizon offers another clue. Every morning, the sun rises in the east. To the ancient Egyptians, this daily event symbolized rebirth. The sun god traveled across the sky during the day and through the underworld at night before emerging once again at dawn. This cycle represented renewal and eternal life. Because the Sphinx faces the sunrise, many researchers believe it may have possessed solar significance. Some scholars suggest the monument symbolized the connection between the king and the sun god. Others propose that it acted as a sacred guardian, welcoming the rebirth of the sun each day. While interpretations vary, the connection between the Sphinx and solar symbolism remains an important area of study. The relationship became even stronger in later periods of Egyptian history. By the time of the New Kingdom, the Sphinx was closely associated with a form of the sun god known as Harmachis, meaning Horus of the Horizon. This title reflected the monument's position facing the dawn. To later Egyptians, the Sphinx was more than an ancient statue. It was a sacred being connected to divine power. Evidence for this importance appears in one of Egypt's most famous inscriptions. Between the paws of the Sphinx stands the dream stela, placed there by Pharaoh Thutmose IV around 1400 BCE. According to the inscription, the young prince fell asleep beside the partially buried monument. In a dream, the Sphinx spoke to him. The great guardian promised that if he cleared away the sand covering its body, he would become king of Egypt. Eventually, Thutmose did become pharaoh. Whether the story describes a genuine dream, a political message, or a combination of both, it demonstrates how important the Sphinx had become in Egyptian culture. By then, the monument was already over 1,000 years old. Even ancient Egyptians viewed it as an artifact from a distant past. This fact is remarkable. The Sphinx was ancient to people who themselves lived thousands of years ago. Its mystery was not created by modern historians. The mystery existed even within ancient Egypt. Another possibility is that the monument served multiple purposes at once. Ancient Egyptian symbols often carried layers of meaning. A single structure could function as a royal monument, a religious symbol, and a political statement simultaneously. The Sphinx may have protected the pyramid complex, honored the king, celebrated solar power, and reinforced royal authority all at the same time. In ancient thought, these ideas were deeply connected. Separating them into neat categories may oversimplify their worldview. Yet, despite centuries of study, certainty remains elusive. No single explanation answers every question, and perhaps that is why the Sphinx continues to fascinate people around the world. It appears familiar. Its symbolism seems understandable, yet the deeper one investigates, the more questions emerge. Was it primarily a guardian, a solar monument, a divine image of kingship, or all three? The evidence suggests that the Sphinx embodied many meanings simultaneously. Its creators likely understood exactly what it represented. Unfortunately, much of that understanding has been lost to time. What remains is a monument that still communicates power, even if some of its message has faded. And nowhere is that uncertainty more visible than in the face itself. A face that may hold the key to understanding the entire monument. A face that has sparked debate among scholars for generations. Because before we can fully understand the Sphinx, we must confront one of archaeology's most intriguing questions. Whose face are we actually looking at? That mystery awaits in the next chapter. Chapter 5. The Face Problem. Few parts of the Great Sphinx attract more attention than its face. Visitors often stand silently before it, studying its expression. Some see wisdom, others see authority. Some see mystery, but archaeologists see something else. A question: whose face is it? At first, the answer appears straightforward. Most Egyptologists believe the face represents Pharaoh Khafre, the ruler commonly associated with the monument's construction. Yet proving that conclusion is far more difficult than it might seem. The challenge begins with the monument itself. Time has not been kind to the Sphinx. Thousands of years of wind, sand, rain, pollution, and human activity have altered its appearance. Many details that once defined the face have been worn away. The nose is missing. Parts of the royal beard have disappeared. Surface erosion has softened important features. As a result, modern researchers are attempting to identify a face that has been partially erased by history. Imagine trying to identify a person from a damaged photograph. That is essentially the challenge facing archaeologists. The face survives, but not perfectly, and every missing detail increases uncertainty. Despite these difficulties, researchers have spent decades comparing the Sphinx's face with statues known to represent Khafre. Several important statues of the pharaoh have survived. Among the most famous is a seated diorite statue discovered in the Valley Temple near his pyramid complex. These sculptures provide valuable clues about how royal artists portrayed the king. Scholars examine the shape of the jaw, the width of the cheeks, the proportions of the eyes, the structure of the mouth. Even subtle details become important. Some researchers argue that similarities between the Sphinx and Khafre statues support the traditional identification. Others believe the evidence is less conclusive. One challenge is scale. The Sphinx is enormous. Its face was carved from natural limestone and designed to be viewed from a distance. Smaller royal statues, meanwhile, were often crafted with greater precision and detail. Comparing the two is not always straightforward. Another complication comes from artistic style. Ancient Egyptian art was not intended to create exact photographic likenesses. Royal portraits often followed established conventions. Kings were typically depicted as youthful, strong, and idealized. Artists emphasized authority and divine status rather than individual imperfections. This means that even if the Sphinx represents Khafre, it may not resemble him exactly as he appeared in life. Instead, it may portray an ideal version of kingship, a symbolic ruler rather than a realistic portrait. This distinction is important. Modern viewers often expect ancient sculptures to function like photographs. Ancient Egyptians viewed them differently. The image mattered, but the symbolism mattered even more. As a result, identifying the face with complete certainty becomes difficult. Yet the debate continues because the answer influences how historians interpret the entire monument. If the face is Khafre, the Sphinx fits neatly within his pyramid complex. It becomes part of a broader architectural and religious program created during his reign. The monument serves as a royal guardian linked directly to one specific pharaoh. If another identity were proven, historians would need to reconsider important assumptions about the monument's purpose and history. That is why the question remains significant. The face is more than a portrait. It is a clue that could help explain why the monument exists. Technology has offered new tools for investigating the mystery. Researchers have used photography, digital modeling, laser scanning, and facial analysis to study the Sphinx in greater detail than ever before. These methods reveal subtle features difficult to observe from the ground. However, technology has not produced a final answer. Different studies sometimes reach different conclusions, and because erosion has altered the original sculpture, certain questions may never be resolved completely. Ironically, the face that millions recognize remains partly unknown. Perhaps that uncertainty contributes to the monument's enduring appeal. Human beings are naturally drawn to mysteries. We want names. We want identities. We want certainty. The Sphinx offers none of these easily. Instead, it sits silently beneath the Egyptian sky, allowing each generation to ask the same questions. Who are you? What were your creators trying to say? What message have you carried across 4,000 years? For now, the strongest archaeological evidence continues to support the connection to Khafre. Most specialists accept this interpretation. Yet archaeology is a science built upon evidence, not assumptions. Researchers continue to examine old clues and search for new ones. The discussion remains active because history is rarely as simple as it first appears. And while scholars debate the face, another mystery lies much lower, not in the head, not in the expression, but beneath the sand itself, because for much of its existence, the Great Sphinx was almost invisible. Buried by the very desert it overlooked, its long struggle against the sands of time is the story of our next chapter. Chapter 6, Lost Beneath the Sand. Today, visitors arriving at Giza see the Great Sphinx rising proudly above the desert floor. Its massive body is clearly visible. Its paws stretch forward across the stone enclosure. Its face looks toward the eastern horizon, just as it has for thousands of years. But for much of its history, the Sphinx looked very different. For centuries, sometimes for generations at a time, most of its body disappeared beneath the sand. Only the head remained visible, like a giant stone island emerging from a sea of desert dunes. It is one of the most surprising facts about the monument. The Great Sphinx survived not only the passage of time, but also repeated burial. Again and again, the desert attempted to reclaim it, and again, people worked to uncover it. The struggle began long ago. The Giza Plateau sits on the edge of the Sahara Desert, one of the driest and most expansive deserts on Earth. Strong winds constantly move fine sand across the landscape. Over years and centuries, that sand accumulates. Walls disappear. Roads vanish. Buildings become buried. Even a monument as large as the Sphinx could not escape this process. Gradually, sand gathered around its body. Then more sand arrived, and more. Eventually, only the head and upper neck remained visible above the dunes. To later generations, it may have seemed as though the monument emerged directly from the earth. Ancient Egyptians themselves faced this challenge. Evidence shows that efforts to clear the Sphinx began thousands of years ago. One of the most famous examples occurred during the reign of Pharaoh Thutmose IV. Around 1400 BCE, the Sphinx was already ancient. By then, drifting sand had covered much of its body. According to the famous dream stela, located between its paws, the young Prince Thutmose rested beside the monument during a hunting trip. As the story goes, he fell asleep. In his dream, the Sphinx spoke. The great guardian promised him kingship if he removed the sand and restored the monument. Soon afterward, Thutmose became pharaoh. Whether the dream was a genuine spiritual experience or a political message designed to strengthen his claim to the throne, historians cannot say for certain. What is clear is that Thutmose launched efforts to excavate and restore the Sphinx. Workers removed enormous quantities of sand. For a time, the monument once again stood largely exposed. But the victory was temporary. The desert never stops moving. As generations passed, the sand returned. Again, the body disappeared. Again, the Sphinx seemed to sink into the landscape. Centuries later, travelers from Greece and Rome encountered the monument. Some described it, others admired it. Many saw only its head rising from the sand. Even in antiquity, people recognized that they were looking at something incredibly old. The Sphinx had already become a relic of a distant past. The cycle continued throughout the Middle Ages. Sand buried the monument repeatedly. Occasional clearing efforts provided only temporary relief. Without constant maintenance, the dunes always returned. The desert was patient. It had all the time in the world. By the 19th century, interest in ancient Egypt began growing rapidly among European explorers and archaeologists. As scholars documented monuments across the country, the Sphinx became a major focus of attention. Artists created drawings showing only the head visible above the sand. Photographs from the early modern era reveal how deeply buried the monument remained. The images are striking. People stand beside the head of the Sphinx, while most of its enormous body lies hidden underground. Many visitors had no idea how much of the statue remained concealed. Major excavation campaigns eventually changed that. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, teams worked to uncover the monument more completely. Thousands of tons of sand were removed. Slowly, the body reappeared. The paws emerged. The enclosure walls became visible. Features unseen for centuries returned to daylight. The process required tremendous effort. Workers battled not only the volume of sand, but also the constant risk that fresh dunes would refill the excavated areas. Yet their persistence succeeded. For the first time in generations, the world could once again see the Sphinx in its full scale. The excavations transformed public understanding of the monument. People realized that the famous head represented only a fraction of the sculpture. The lion's body stretched far beyond what many had imagined. The discovery renewed global fascination with the site, but exposure brought new challenges. Once buried beneath protective layers of sand, portions of the monument now faced increased weathering. Conservation became just as important as excavation. Engineers and archaeologists began studying how best to preserve the ancient limestone. Their work continues today. The battle against time has never truly ended. The Sphinx remains vulnerable to erosion, pollution, groundwater, and environmental change. Each generation inherits responsibility for protecting it. Yet there is a strange irony in the monument's history. The sand that threatened to bury the Sphinx may also have helped preserve parts of it. By covering much of the body for long periods, the desert shielded certain sections from exposure. The same force that concealed the monument also protected it. History often works in unexpected ways. What appeared to be an enemy sometimes became an accidental guardian. And while the sands hid much of the Sphinx, they could not hide everything. Over the centuries, people developed stories to explain its appearance. Legends emerged. Rumors spread. And one mystery in particular captured the imagination of generations. A mystery visible on every photograph. A mystery impossible to ignore. The missing nose. How did one of the world's most famous monuments lose its most recognizable feature? The answer is more complicated than many people realize. And separating fact from myth is the focus of our next chapter. Chapter 7. The Mystery of the Missing Nose. Few features of the Great Sphinx attract more attention than the one that is no longer there: its nose. Almost every visitor notices it immediately. Photographs from around the world show the same image. A colossal stone face, calm expression, ancient eyes staring toward the horizon, and a large gap where the nose once stood. The missing nose has become one of the most famous mysteries in archaeology. For centuries, people have wondered what happened. Was it destroyed in battle, damaged by invaders, broken by nature, or deliberately removed? The truth is both fascinating and more complicated than many popular stories suggest. One of the most common myths blames the French army of the early 19th century. According to the story, soldiers serving under the military leader Napoleon Bonaparte used the Sphinx for target practice and accidentally blasted off its nose with cannon fire. The tale is dramatic. It is easy to remember, and for many years, it spread widely through books, magazines, documentaries, and tourist conversations. There is only one problem. The evidence does not support it. Historical drawings of the Sphinx made before Napoleon's arrival in Egypt already show the nose missing. These sketches prove that the damage occurred long before French troops ever reached Giza. As appealing as the story may be, historians generally reject it. The nose had disappeared centuries earlier. If Napoleon was not responsible, then who was? One possible answer comes from historical accounts written during the medieval period. A historian named al-Makrizi recorded a story dating to the 14th century. According to the account, a religious figure became angered by local people making offerings near the Sphinx. Believing such practices were inappropriate, he allegedly damaged the monument. Some historians suggest this event may explain the missing nose. However, even this explanation is not entirely certain. Ancient monuments often suffer damage from multiple causes over long periods. Records can be incomplete. Stories can change as they pass through generations. Archaeologists therefore approach such accounts carefully. The evidence suggests deliberate human damage is likely, but absolute certainty remains difficult. What experts do know is that removing the nose would not have been easy. The nose itself was substantial. Based on surviving measurements, it may have been more than a meter wide. This was not a small decorative feature. Breaking it away would have required significant effort. Close examination of the face suggests that tools may have been used to detach it. Marks visible on the monument support the possibility of deliberate removal. Yet the nose is not the only missing part of the Sphinx. The royal beard has also largely vanished. Fragments of it were discovered during excavations and are now preserved in museums. These pieces reveal that the monument once possessed additional details, no longer visible today. The Sphinx we see now is not exactly the same monument ancient Egyptians knew. It has changed over time. Weather has altered its surface. Human actions have removed certain features. Restoration efforts have added others. Every generation has left traces behind. The missing nose has become a symbol of that long history. It reminds us that ancient monuments are not frozen in time. They evolve. They suffer damage. They survive disasters. And sometimes they lose parts of themselves along the way. Interestingly, the fascination with the missing nose may reveal something about human nature. People often focus on what is absent rather than what remains. The Great Sphinx has survived for more than 4,000 years. Its enormous body still stands. Its face remains recognizable. Its presence continues to dominate the landscape. Yet one missing feature captures endless attention. Perhaps that is because mysteries invite imagination. When information is missing, stories rush in to fill the gap. Legends emerge. Rumors spread. Speculation flourishes. The nose became one of those gaps. And over centuries, countless explanations appeared. Some were plausible. Others were entirely fictional. Separating fact from myth remains one of archaeology's most important responsibilities. The real story of the Sphinx is remarkable enough without exaggeration. Its survival through thousands of years is far more impressive than any invented legend. But the missing nose is only one piece of a much larger puzzle, because while people often focus on what the Sphinx has lost, archaeologists focus on what it still contains. Every crack in the limestone, every layer of stone, every mark left by ancient tools. These clues help researchers understand not only how the monument changed, but how it was created in the first place. And that investigation leads to another fascinating mystery. How did ancient builders carve one of the largest statues on Earth using the technology available more than 4,000 years ago? The answer reveals a story of engineering, planning, and human determination that remains extraordinary even by modern standards. That story begins in our next chapter. Chapter 8. How the Sphinx was built. Standing before the Great Sphinx, it is difficult not to ask a simple question. How did ancient people create something this enormous? The monument stretches approximately 73 meters in length. Its height reaches about 20 meters. Its massive body was carved directly from solid limestone bedrock. Even today, the scale is impressive. More than 4,000 years ago, it must have seemed almost unimaginable. Yet the builders of ancient Egypt accomplished it without steel machinery, power tools, or modern construction equipment. Their achievement remains one of the greatest engineering feats of the ancient world. The story begins with the landscape itself. Unlike many statues that were assembled from separate pieces, the Sphinx was carved from a natural ridge of limestone already present on the Giza Plateau. Ancient planners recognized an opportunity. Instead of transporting a giant block of stone from a distant quarry, they transformed part of the landscape into a monument. The process likely began with careful surveying. Egyptian engineers were highly skilled at measuring land and aligning structures. The pyramids themselves demonstrate extraordinary precision. The builders first determined the shape and dimensions of the future monument. Then the excavation began. Workers cut trenches around the limestone outcrop. Gradually, the surrounding stone was removed. As the rock was cleared away, the basic outline of the Sphinx emerged. This stage alone required enormous labor. Thousands of tons of limestone had to be extracted. The stone was not wasted. Many of the blocks removed during excavation appear to have been used in nearby temples associated with the Sphinx and Khafre's pyramid complex. In this way, one construction project supported another. The monument and the surrounding temples were physically connected from the very beginning. Once the rough shape appeared, craftsmen began the long process of carving details. The lion's body took form. The paws were shaped. The tail was outlined. Finally, attention turned to the head. The head required particular care. It represented royal authority and likely carried deep symbolic meaning. Stone workers used copper tools, stone hammers, wooden mallets, and abrasive materials to shape the surface. Although copper is softer than iron, skilled craftsmen could still produce remarkable results through patience and technique. Construction in ancient Egypt depended less on advanced technology and more on organization, manpower, and expertise. The workforce behind the Sphinx was probably large. Skilled artisans worked alongside laborers, engineers, supervisors, and administrators. Food, water, tools, and materials had to be supplied continuously. Such a project required planning on a national scale. This was one reason pharaohs were able to build monuments that astonish the world, even today. They possessed the authority and resources to mobilize vast numbers of people. But building the Sphinx presented challenges beyond size. The limestone itself varied in quality. Some layers were relatively hard and durable. Others were softer and more vulnerable to erosion. Modern researchers can still see these differences across the monument's surface. Certain sections have weathered more rapidly than others. In some places, ancient builders may have adapted their carving techniques to account for these variations. The stone dictated what was possible. Even master craftsmen had to work with the material they were given. Interestingly, the head appears proportionally smaller than the body. This has sparked discussion among researchers. Some scholars suggest the natural shape of the limestone ridge influenced the final design. Others believe adjustments may have occurred during construction. Whatever the explanation, the monument's proportions remain one of its most distinctive features. The Sphinx is not simply a giant statue. It is also a product of the geological conditions that shaped it. The landscape itself became part of the artwork. Modern technology has helped researchers study the monument more closely. Laser scans reveal tool marks and construction details invisible to the naked eye. Geological surveys provide insight into the stone layers used by ancient builders. Digital models allow experts to reconstruct damaged features and test theories about the monument's original appearance. Yet, despite these advances, many aspects of the construction process remain uncertain. No surviving blueprint exists. No ancient instruction manual explains the work, step by step. The builders left behind the monument itself, and archaeologists must read the stone like a historical document. Every cut tells a story. Every surface preserves evidence. Every detail offers clues about the people who stood here thousands of years ago. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the Sphinx is not its mystery, but its existence. Ancient workers transformed a natural rock formation into one of the most recognizable monuments on Earth. They accomplished this using knowledge, determination, and extraordinary craftsmanship. The result has survived for more than 40 centuries. Empires have vanished. Languages have changed. Entire civilizations have disappeared. Yet, the Sphinx remains. Its survival speaks not only to the ambition of its creators, but also to the durability of human imagination. Still, building the monument was only the beginning. Once completed, the Sphinx entered a long and difficult battle against time itself. Wind, sand, water, and pollution would slowly attack the limestone. Restorations would become necessary. Repairs would continue for thousands of years. The story of preserving the Sphinx is almost as remarkable as the story of building it, and that ongoing struggle forms the next chapter of our journey. Chapter 9. The Battle Against Time. The Great Sphinx was built to endure. Its creators carved it directly from the bedrock of the Giza Plateau. They gave it the body of a lion, the face of a king, and a place beside one of the greatest pyramid complexes ever constructed. Yet even monuments carved from stone are not immortal. From the moment the final carving was completed, the Sphinx began a battle it could never fully win. A battle against time. For more than 4,000 years, nature has tested the monument's strength. Wind has scraped its surface. Sand has worn away details. Changes in temperature have expanded and contracted the stone. Occasional rainfall has seeped into cracks. Human activity has added new challenges. The result is a monument that survives, but one that carries the scars of history. The ancient Egyptians themselves recognized the problem. Evidence suggests that repairs began surprisingly early. In fact, restoration efforts may have started while the monument was still relatively young. This tells us something important. The Sphinx was never a perfectly preserved statue standing untouched for thousands of years. It required maintenance almost from the beginning. The limestone used to create the monument varies in strength. Some layers are dense and durable. Others are softer and more fragile. As centuries passed, these differences became increasingly visible. Certain sections eroded faster than others. The body suffered particularly severe weathering. The head, carved from harder stone, survived in better condition. This is one reason the face remains recognizable today, while parts of the body required extensive restoration. By the time of the New Kingdom, around 1,000 years after the Sphinx was built, Egyptian rulers were already concerned about preserving it. Pharaoh Thutmose IV famously ordered major excavation and restoration work after clearing sand from around the monument. His dream stela, placed between the Sphinx's paws, remains one of the most important historical records connected to the site. It serves as evidence that preservation efforts were underway even in ancient times. The Sphinx was already considered a treasure worth saving, and that attitude continued for centuries. Successive rulers repaired damaged sections and reinforced vulnerable areas. Blocks of stone were added where erosion had removed original material. Cracks were filled. Surfaces were strengthened. Every generation contributed to the monument's survival. Without these efforts, the Sphinx might have disappeared long ago. Yet restoration is never simple. Each repair raises difficult questions. How much should be replaced? How much original material should remain untouched? How can damaged areas be protected without altering the monument's historical character? These questions challenge conservators even today. Modern preservation efforts began accelerating during the 19th and 20th centuries. As Egypt became a major destination for archaeology and tourism, concern for the monument increased. Scientists examined the stone more closely. Engineers studied structural weaknesses. Researchers monitored the effects of pollution and environmental change. New technologies provided tools unavailable to earlier generations. But modern solutions sometimes created unexpected problems. Some restoration materials used during the 20th century failed to perform as expected. Certain repairs trapped moisture inside the stone. Others aged differently from the original limestone. Conservators eventually had to remove and replace some earlier restoration work. Preserving an ancient monument is often a process of learning through experience. Even experts occasionally discover that a well-intentioned solution creates new challenges. Today, the threats facing the Sphinx are different from those encountered by ancient Egyptians. Wind and sand remain constant concerns. However, modern urban development has introduced additional risks. Air pollution can affect limestone surfaces. Changes in groundwater levels may weaken parts of the monument. Increasing tourism places pressure on archaeological sites throughout Egypt. Protecting the Sphinx requires balancing preservation with public access. Millions of people want to experience the monument firsthand. At the same time, every visitor becomes part of an environment that must be carefully managed. Conservation teams continuously monitor the site. They study cracks, erosion patterns, moisture levels, and structural stability. Their goal is simple, but enormously challenging. Ensure that future generations can still stand before the Sphinx and experience the same sense of wonder. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the monument's survival is not that it has suffered damage. It is that it still exists at all. Think about everything the Sphinx has witnessed. The rise and fall of ancient kingdoms. The arrival of Greek rulers. The expansion of the Roman Empire. The spread of Christianity. The emergence of Islam. The age of exploration. The Industrial Revolution. The modern world. Through all of it, the Sphinx remained. Weathered. Damaged. Restored. But still present. Every crack in the stone represents a chapter of history. Every repair tells a story of people determined to preserve the past. The monument has become more than an artifact. It is a survivor, a witness to human civilization itself. Yet despite centuries of study and restoration, some mysteries continue to endure. Archaeologists have mapped the monument, scanned its surface, analyzed its stone, excavated its surroundings. And still, questions remain. Questions about symbolism. Questions about lost features. Questions about what ancient people truly believed when they stood before this colossal guardian. Because even after 4,000 years, the Great Sphinx has not revealed all of its secrets. And that enduring mystery is exactly what we will explore next. Chapter 10: The Enduring Mystery of the Great Sphinx. After more than 4,000 years of existence, the Great Sphinx remains one of humanity's most studied monuments. Its dimensions have been measured. Its stone has been analyzed. Its surroundings have been excavated. Its history has been examined by generations of archaeologists, historians, engineers, and travelers. And yet, despite all of that effort, the monument continues to inspire questions. This is perhaps the greatest mystery of all. Not that the Sphinx is completely unknown, but that it is both known and unknown at the same time. We know where it stands. We know approximately when it was built. We know it was likely associated with Pharaoh Khafre in the 4th dynasty. We know it formed part of a larger sacred landscape connected to the pyramids of Giza. Yet, many details remain uncertain. The exact purpose of the monument is still debated. The identity represented by its face, while widely associated with Khafre, cannot be proven with absolute certainty. The symbolism behind certain aspects of its design may never be fully understood. The people who built it left behind a masterpiece, but not a complete explanation. That silence has fueled centuries of fascination. Throughout history, human beings have been drawn to mysteries. We naturally seek answers. When evidence is incomplete, imagination fills the gaps. The Great Sphinx has inspired countless stories as a result. Ancient travelers wondered who created it. Medieval writers recorded legends about it. Modern authors have connected it to lost civilizations, hidden knowledge, and forgotten secrets. Some of these stories are entertaining. Others are imaginative works of fiction. But archaeology follows a different path. Archaeologists rely on evidence. They examine artifacts. They study geology. They compare inscriptions. They test hypotheses against observable facts. The goal is not to create mysteries, but to solve them. And in the case of the Sphinx, archaeological research has revealed a remarkable amount. The monument almost certainly dates to Egypt's Old Kingdom. Its location strongly connects it to Khafre's pyramid complex. Its design reflects ideas of kingship, protection, and divine authority. Its orientation toward the rising sun suggests important religious symbolism. These conclusions are supported by decades of careful study. At the same time, researchers recognize the limits of certainty. History is rarely complete. Documents disappear. Monuments erode. Evidence is lost. Some questions may never receive definitive answers. Accepting uncertainty is part of responsible historical investigation. The Sphinx teaches this lesson better than almost any other monument. It reminds us that the past is not a puzzle with every piece intact. Sometimes we must work with fragments. Sometimes we must accept probabilities rather than absolute proof. And sometimes the most honest answer is simply, we do not know. Far from weakening the story, that uncertainty makes it more powerful. The Sphinx invites curiosity. It encourages investigation. It challenges each generation to ask new questions. New technologies continue to provide fresh insights. High-resolution scanning reveals details invisible to earlier researchers. Ground surveys improve our understanding of the surrounding landscape. Conservation studies reveal how the monument has changed over time. Every discovery adds another piece to the story. Yet the monument always seems to retain a measure of mystery. Perhaps that is why it remains so compelling. The Great Pyramid impresses us with its scale. Ancient temples amaze us with their beauty. But the Sphinx does something different. It appears to be watching. Its calm expression creates the illusion of awareness. Visitors often describe feeling observed rather than merely observing. Of course, the monument is only stone. Yet the impression remains. A silent face, an endless gaze, a guardian waiting through the centuries. The effect is psychological, but it is remarkably powerful. For thousands of years, people have stood before the Sphinx and felt the same sense of wonder. Pharaohs felt it, Greek travelers felt it, Roman visitors felt it, medieval pilgrims felt it, modern tourists feel it today. The monument connects generations separated by vast stretches of time. Everyone arrives with questions. Everyone leaves with at least a few unanswered. That may be the secret of its enduring appeal. The Sphinx does not simply provide answers. It inspires them. It reminds us that history is not only about what we know, it is also about what we continue to seek. And as long as human beings remain curious about the past, the Great Sphinx will continue to hold a special place in our imagination. But before we conclude our journey, there is one final story to tell. Not about kings, not about archaeology, not about restoration. Instead, it is about legacy. What the Sphinx means today. Why it remains one of the most recognizable symbols on Earth, and what its future may hold in the centuries to come. That final chapter awaits. Chapter 11, Legacy of the Silent Guardian. As the sun rises over the Giza Plateau, the Great Sphinx continues its timeless watch. Thousands of years have passed since its creators carved it from the limestone bedrock. Empires have risen and fallen. Languages have appeared and disappeared. Religions have spread across continents. Entire civilizations have become chapters in history books. Yet the Sphinx remains. It is difficult to find another monument that has maintained such a powerful presence for so long. Today, the Great Sphinx is far more than an archaeological site. It has become a global symbol. Its image appears in textbooks, films, documentaries, artwork, advertisements, and museums around the world. People who know little about ancient Egypt can still recognize its distinctive silhouette. The lion's body, the human face, the gaze fixed toward the eastern horizon. These features have become part of humanity's shared cultural memory. Few monuments possess such universal recognition. Part of this legacy comes from the monument's extraordinary age. The Sphinx was ancient, before many famous civilizations even existed. When the first philosophers walked through ancient Greece, the Sphinx was already thousands of years old. When Rome emerged as a world power, the Sphinx was already an ancient monument. When medieval castles were being built across Europe, the Sphinx had been standing for millennia. Its timeline stretches across an almost unimaginable span of human history. This longevity gives the monument a unique perspective. If the Sphinx could speak, what stories would it tell? It would remember the workers who carved its body from living rock. It would remember the priests who performed rituals nearby. It would remember the pharaohs who ruled from distant palaces. It would remember the sandstorms that buried its body and the generations who uncovered it again. Of course, the Sphinx cannot speak. Its silence is part of its power. Unlike written records that explain themselves, the monument leaves room for interpretation. Each generation sees something slightly different. Ancient Egyptians saw a sacred guardian. Greek travelers saw a wonder of the world. Modern archaeologists see a valuable source of historical evidence. Visitors today often see a symbol of endurance and mystery. The monument adapts without changing. Its meaning evolves while its presence remains constant. The Sphinx also reminds us of humanity's ability to create works that outlive their creators. The people who built it could never have imagined modern cameras, airplanes, satellites, or the internet. Yet their creation survived long enough to be photographed from space. It survived long enough to become one of the most visited archaeological sites on Earth. It survived long enough to inspire people living more than 40 centuries after its construction. That achievement alone is extraordinary. In many ways, the Sphinx represents the best of ancient Egyptian civilization. It reflects remarkable engineering, sophisticated artistic skill, complex religious beliefs, advanced organizational ability, and an ambition that sought permanence in a world of constant change. Those qualities helped transform Egypt into one of history's greatest civilizations. The Sphinx remains one of its most powerful symbols. But legacy also brings responsibility. Future generations will inherit this monument, just as we inherited it from the past. Preservation is no longer simply an Egyptian concern. The Sphinx is part of the world's cultural heritage. Its protection matters to people across continents and cultures. Scientists, conservators, engineers, historians, and local communities all play a role in safeguarding it. Their work ensures that future visitors will continue to experience the monument firsthand. This responsibility becomes increasingly important as environmental pressures grow, climate conditions change, urban development expands, tourism increases. Every generation faces new challenges. The survival of the Sphinx depends on continued care and thoughtful conservation. The monument has already endured for more than 4,000 years. Whether it survives another 4,000 may depend on decisions made today. Yet there is reason for optimism. Modern technology allows researchers to monitor the monument more carefully than ever before. Conservation methods continue to improve. International cooperation has strengthened preservation efforts. The same human ingenuity that created the Sphinx now helps protect it. That connection between past and present is deeply meaningful. The monument is not merely a relic. It is a bridge connecting ancient builders to modern observers, a bridge connecting forgotten history to living memory, a bridge connecting questions from the past to discoveries of the future. Perhaps this is the true legacy of the Great Sphinx. Not simply that it survived, but that it continues to inspire. Every year, millions travel to Giza. Some come for history. Some come for photography. Some come because they have dreamed of seeing it since childhood. Almost all leave with a sense of awe. The monument has a way of making people feel small. Not in an unpleasant sense, but in a humbling one. It reminds us how brief a human life is, compared to the vast sweep of history. And yet it also reminds us that human creativity can achieve something lasting, something meaningful, something capable of speaking across thousands of years. Without words, without movement, without sound, the Great Sphinx has spent more than 4 millennia doing exactly that, and its message continues to reach every generation willing to listen. Still, one final chapter remains, a chapter that brings together everything we have learned, a final reflection on why this ancient guardian continues to captivate the world, and why, despite all we know, the Great Sphinx remains one of history's greatest wonders. Chapter 12. The Eternal Watcher. As our journey through the history of the Great Sphinx comes to an end, we return to where we began, the Giza Plateau, the edge of the desert, the first light of dawn spreading across the horizon, and there, standing silently against the sky, is the Great Sphinx, unmoving, unchanging, watching. For more than 4,000 years, this monument has challenged the limits of human imagination. It has survived longer than kingdoms, longer than empires, longer than nearly every structure built by human hands. Its creators vanished into history thousands of years ago. Their names survive only in fragments. Their voices are silent, yet their creation remains. The Sphinx is one of the rare monuments that seems to exist outside ordinary time. Every generation encounters it differently. Ancient Egyptians saw it as a sacred guardian. Pharaohs restored it. Priests honored it. Kings connected themselves to its power. For them, The Sphinx was not merely a monument, it was part of a living spiritual landscape. Centuries later, travelers from distant lands arrived and stood before it in wonder. The Greeks admired it. The Romans described it. Medieval visitors told stories about it. Explorers sketched it. Archaeologists studied it. Photographers captured it. And today, millions continue to visit from every corner of the globe. The monument belongs to no single generation. It belongs to history itself. Throughout this documentary, we have explored what archaeology can tell us. We have seen how evidence connects the Sphinx to the age of Pharaoh Khafre and Egypt's 4th dynasty. We have examined its symbolism, its construction, and its role within the larger pyramid complex. We have followed its long struggle against sand, erosion, and time. We have separated myths from evidence and explored the mysteries that still remain. And perhaps the most remarkable discovery is this. The Sphinx does not need legends to be extraordinary. The real story is already astonishing. A civilization more than 4,000 years ago carved a colossal monument directly from living rock. They created a symbol so powerful that it survived the collapse of their own world. Few achievements in human history can rival that accomplishment. Yet even after centuries of study, the Sphinx continues to teach an important lesson. Not every question receives a final answer. Modern society often celebrates certainty. We seek clear explanations, definitive conclusions, perfect knowledge. But history rarely works that way. The past reaches us through fragments, broken stones, faded inscriptions, weathered monuments. Archaeologists reconstruct stories from incomplete evidence. Some mysteries are solved. Others remain open. The Great Sphinx stands at the intersection of both. Much has been learned. Much remains uncertain. And that balance is part of its enduring appeal. The monument reminds us that curiosity is one of humanity's greatest strengths. Every generation asks new questions. Every generation searches for new answers. And every generation leaves with a deeper appreciation for the people who came before. Perhaps that is why visitors often describe a strange feeling when standing before the Sphinx. It is difficult to explain. The monument is made of stone, yet it feels alive with history. Its face appears calm, but its silence feels meaningful. Its gaze seems fixed on the horizon, yet somehow it also seems directed inward toward the past itself. The effect is deeply human. We look at the Sphinx, and in a way, the Sphinx invites us to look back at ourselves, to consider our place in history, to recognize how brief our lives are compared to the ages that came before, and to ask what traces we will leave behind for future generations. The builders of the Sphinx could never have imagined the modern world. They could not foresee airplanes crossing the sky above Giza. They could not imagine satellites orbiting Earth. They could not predict cameras, computers, or digital maps, yet their work survived long enough to witness all of it. That survival transforms the monument into something more than an archaeological treasure. It becomes a symbol of continuity, a reminder that human achievement can outlast individuals, governments, and even civilizations. The Sphinx has become one of humanity's great storytellers, not because it speaks, but because it endures. Its story is written in stone, in weathered surfaces, in ancient repairs, in buried layers of sand, in the questions it continues to inspire. And perhaps the greatest mystery is not who built it or why. Perhaps the greatest mystery is why a silent monument still captures the imagination of millions after more than 40 centuries. Why people continue to travel across oceans just to stand before it. Why historians continue to study it. Why artists continue to paint it. Why filmmakers continue to document it. Why children continue to learn about it. The answer may be simple. The Sphinx represents something timeless: the desire to understand, the desire to create, the desire to leave a mark upon the world. Those ambitions connect us to the ancient builders who stood on this plateau thousands of years ago. Their world is gone. Their cities have faded. Their voices have vanished. But one silent guardian remains, still facing the dawn, still watching the horizon, still keeping its secrets. And as long as the Great Sphinx stands beneath the Egyptian sky, it will continue to remind humanity of the wonder, ambition, and mystery that define our shared past. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of one of the world's greatest monuments. Until next time, keep exploring the stories hidden within the ancient world, because history is never truly silent. It is simply waiting to be heard. As our journey through the world of the Great Sphinx comes to an end, the ancient guardian remains exactly where it has stood for thousands of years, watching silently over the Giza Plateau, facing the rising sun as it has done for more than 4 millennia. Throughout this documentary, we explored one of humanity's most remarkable achievements. We traced the story of a monument carved from living rock during the age of the pharaohs. We examined the evidence connecting it to the reign of Khafre, explored its possible role as a guardian of sacred ground, and followed its long struggle against wind, sand, erosion, and time itself. We learned how generations of ancient Egyptians cared for the monument, restoring and protecting it long after its creators were gone. We uncovered the truth behind some of its most famous myths and legends, while also recognizing that certain questions remain unanswered. Even after centuries of study, the Great Sphinx continues to challenge our understanding and inspire new discoveries. Perhaps that is the true power of the Sphinx. It reminds us that history is not merely a collection of dates, names, and events. History is a conversation between the past and the present. Every monument, artifact, and ancient inscription carries a message from people who lived long before us. The challenge is learning how to listen. The Great Sphinx speaks in a unique way. It has no written autobiography. No surviving document tells its complete story. Instead, its story is written in weathered limestone, buried foundations, restoration blocks, and archaeological clues scattered across the desert landscape. For thousands of years, people have stood before the Sphinx and asked many of the same questions we ask today. Who built it? Why was it created? What did it mean to those who first looked upon it? What ceremonies took place before it? What thoughts filled the minds of the workers who carved its massive form from the stone of the Giza Plateau? Some of those questions may eventually be answered through future discoveries. Others may remain mysteries forever. And perhaps that is perfectly fitting. Not every chapter of history survives intact. Some pages have been lost. Some voices have faded. Some stories can only be partially reconstructed from the fragments left behind. Yet even incomplete stories have value. The Great Sphinx teaches us that the past does not need to be fully understood to be meaningful. Sometimes the search itself is what matters. The pursuit of knowledge, the excitement of discovery, and the willingness to ask questions are what keep history alive. As we look at the Sphinx today, it is worth remembering how much it has witnessed. It watched as ancient workers built the pyramids nearby. It witnessed the rise and fall of dynasties. It stood through periods of prosperity and periods of hardship. It endured foreign invasions, political upheavals, and dramatic cultural change. It survived while entire civilizations disappeared into the pages of history. When the Greeks arrived in Egypt, the Sphinx was already ancient. When Roman emperors ruled the Mediterranean, it was ancient. When medieval travelers crossed deserts and oceans, it was ancient. When the modern world emerged with its machines, airplanes, and digital technology, the Sphinx remained ancient. Few human creations can claim such a perspective. Its lifespan stretches across nearly the entire recorded history of civilization. In many ways, the Sphinx serves as a reminder of humanity's shared heritage. Regardless of nationality, language, religion, or background, people from every corner of the world travel to Giza and experience the same feeling of wonder. Standing before the monument creates a connection across time. The same sun that illuminates the Sphinx today illuminated it thousands of years ago. The same stars that shine above it tonight shone over ancient Egypt. The same desert winds continue to sweep across the plateau. For a brief moment, the distance between past and present seems to disappear. That experience is one of history's greatest gifts. It allows us to see ourselves as part of a much larger story. A story that began long before we arrived and will continue long after we are gone. The Great Sphinx also reminds us of the incredible capabilities of the human spirit. Its builders possessed no modern machinery. They had no computers, no engines, no advanced industrial tools. Yet through knowledge, determination, organization, and creativity, they created something that has endured for over 4,000 years. Their achievement demonstrates that greatness is not defined by technology alone. It is defined by vision. The people who built the Sphinx imagined something extraordinary and then found a way to bring it into existence. That lesson remains just as relevant today as it was in ancient Egypt. Every generation leaves something behind. Some leave monuments. Some leave ideas. Some leave discoveries. Some leave works of art. The builders of the Sphinx left a symbol that continues to inspire humanity thousands of years later. As custodians of the present, we now share the responsibility of protecting that legacy. Preserving ancient monuments is not simply about saving old stones. It is about safeguarding the stories, achievements, and experiences of those who came before us. Each restoration effort, each archaeological study, and each act of conservation helps ensure that future generations will have the opportunity to stand before the Sphinx and experience the same sense of wonder that visitors feel today. Perhaps centuries from now, new travelers will arrive at Giza just as we do now. They will look upon the same face. They will ask many of the same questions. They will marvel at the same achievement. And they, too, will feel the powerful connection between the modern world and the distant past. As darkness settles over the Giza Plateau and the stars appear above the desert, the Great Sphinx continues its eternal watch. Silent, patient, timeless, a guardian of memory, a witness to history, a monument that has outlived kingdoms, empires, and generations. And though it may never reveal all of its secrets, perhaps that is exactly as it should be. For some mysteries are not meant to be solved completely. They are meant to inspire curiosity, imagination, and a lifelong love of discovery. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of the Great Sphinx. We hope this story has deepened your appreciation for one of the world's most extraordinary monuments and for the remarkable civilization that created it. If you enjoyed this episode, consider supporting the channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing it with others who love history. Your support helps us continue exploring the stories, mysteries, and forgotten worlds of the ancient past. Until our next journey through history, may your evenings be peaceful, your curiosity remain strong, and your sense of wonder never fade. Good night, and thank you for spending this time with us here on Ziddy Night History.